So it's 11:30. Good morning, all. Delighted to see you on this snowy day. I predicted this is the last day of snow, and that tomorrow we're going to see the start of spring. That's my personal prediction. It's kind of a wish prediction. Hope you all are well and your family's well. And I want to wish you all a Chag Purim, a very happy Purim, which is coming up at the end of the week. Already programs at the temple, I think yesterday, and programs Thursday and Friday as well. Just a couple of things at the beginning. First of all, as many of you know, we have had difficulty obtaining an appointment for vaccine, and I know many of you had. If you're eligible and if you need assistance, Lori Zinberg in our temple office has been very helpful there. So you can email Lori, LZINBERG at tewnj.org. Jackie's going to put that up on the chat so you'll have it. That's Lori Zinberg, LZINBERG at tewnj.org. We appreciate all the effort that she and Rabbi Prosnit and others have made to do that. Okay, so today's program is a little bit different. We're focusing on a new and exciting venture for Westfield. Reimagining, revisioning downtown Westfield. You might ask, what does this have to do with Temple Emanu-El? It's a fair question. And a quick answer is that we are one of the religious institutions that are central to the spirit and vitality of Westfield. We're very important to Westfield. We're one of the largest religious institutions in the county. Secondly, the vitality of the Westfield community is critical to us. And third, and perhaps most important, I strongly and firmly believe that this initiative that you're going to hear about is built on values which we in most religious institutions cherish and foster. Just to mention a few, we're talking about sustainability and the environment. We're talking about diversity and pluralism. We're talking about wellness and accessibility for seniors and for people with disabilities and for everyone. And perhaps most important, we're talking about building a sense of community. Community is central to Jewish life, to religious life, to life of towns and cities, and that's what this is about. So sustainability, environment, diversity, pluralism, wellness, accessibility, and community. I've met with the people who are leading this initiative. I am tremendously impressed with what's happening. I'm grateful for the opportunity that we all have for input. And today may very well be the beginning of several opportunities to share ideas and input. We're going to have a robust Q&A. The presentation is probably going to be not more than about 20 minutes. And then you'll have an opportunity for questions and comments. So now I want to turn it over to Rabbi, whoops, I just, first time I've done that, right? Okay, Mayor, my friend, Mayor, in the next life, maybe, Rabbi.
That's right.
Mayor Shelley Brindle is going to introduce the program. And I just want to take a moment to thank the mayor, who is also my friend, for her leadership, for her skill, for her energy. The mayor's recognition that this is an inflection point in our community and in our world, an extraordinary opportunity created unfortunately by the pandemic, created by remote virtual living, created by changes in our downtown area, and particularly the property of Lord and Taylor, which is owned by the Hudson's Bay Corporation. All of these, and I'm sure I left out other things as well. But for me, the big inflection point is that we have such leadership, such marvelous leadership in Mayor Brindle and her team. So thank you for everything you're doing. And Shelly, it's yours.
Thank you, Rabbi. Honestly, I couldn't have asked.
You can call me mayor if you want to.
Yeah, in my next life. You've never officially been my rabbi, but I really think of you as my rabbi. Your wisdom and encouragement is really, I can't tell you how helpful it has been to me. And I couldn't have asked for a better setup than what you just articulated. And I think the thing that you said at the very end is the most important, and it's about creating community and creating opportunities that enable community to support all the things that you mentioned. And when I came as mayor, the revitalization of our downtown was really at the cornerstone of what I wanted to accomplish. And I know a lot of people want quick fixes, but there isn't a quick fix. Downtowns are ecosystems, and they require a holistic solution to make them thrive. And it's not as simple as to some people. It's not just fixing parking. It's not just lowering rents. It really has to take a very holistic view of things in order to get it right, so that it sustains itself for generations, not just for the next few years. And so we are incredibly fortunate in terms of, we have this amazing Lord and Taylor property, which I think we are all emotionally attached to. I certainly have been for the 27 years I've lived in town, and incredibly sad to see it close. But like all things, we have to be very proactive in figuring out how we can create opportunities out of things that we have no control over. So this is actually the fruition of a conversation that I started in December of 2018 with the chairman of Hudson's Bay Corporation, Richard Baker. And so Richard and I talked about, and this is my anticipation, that Lord and Taylor would not survive in the long term because of just what was going on in the retail environment. So it began a long conversation about our vision for our town, the community that we talked about, and their vision for what they hope to, what kind of partner that they want to be. And in that time, they introduced me to Streetworks, and you're going to hear about them today. Ultimately, Hudson's Bay purchased Streetworks, which is one of the premier planning and development firms in the country, and Richard will tell you all about it, to help us reimagine our town. They have recently been designated as the developer not only for the Lord and Taylor property, but for the train station parking lots, the south lot and the north side, because they want to be great partners to the town and understand that the town's success is critical to their success. And it is our incredible good fortune that we have not only a premier developer and planner working on our plans for our downtown, but our largest stakeholder being a property owner, which means they're not in this to come in and get out. They are vested in the long-term success of this community. So I think you're going to hear about that today directly from Richard Heaps, who's going to be, I think, piloting the presentation. Along with him is Teresa Danusar and Dan Rosen from Streetworks, and they're going to help facilitate some of the Q&A. So I look forward to your input, and we've said this from day one with the Streetworks team. This has to be driven by the public. We have a great idea of what we need, but the real solutions need to come from the community. And we are very aligned in how we all agree with that, and they have a track record of doing that well. So it's very important that you all stay engaged. Please ask lots of questions, and this will not be your first opportunity to provide input. There'll be lots of that, but this is going to be the first, and like I said, we're only as good as the input and direction we get from you. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Richard.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. It's my pleasure to be here. My job is to introduce ourselves to you quickly. Not that I want to talk about myself. I have plenty of time to do that, but just to get to know us. We're here to begin to start getting to know you. This is not going to be the first and only time. We're looking forward to speaking a number of times this year. If I could have the slides, uh, if you'll, give me your patience a little bit for 20 minutes. Let me tell you a little bit about us. Who is HBC particularly? HBC is the owner of Lord and Taylor, and therefore controls the land that we all know as the Lord and Taylor parcel. If you give me the next slide, Dan, HBC is an unusual company. HBC is 350 years old. Why does that matter? Who cares? It matters because we're not short-term players. We have been doing a number of things for 350 years, and we don't walk away from things. So when we talk about us, we like to feel that we are a part of Westfield in an important way and have a commitment to Westfield and are here not to do something and flip it or do the latest thing or whatever. We want to continue to be a great partner with Westfield. Next slide, Dan. Now, Streetworks, which the mayor mentioned, was my company. I founded it with a partner, I like to say in the last century, since we're talking in those terms, barely 1998. But for 30 years, we have been making places like you see on the slide here, helping cities and towns redevelop their downtowns, or in some cases, like in Boca Raton, make it downtown where there wasn't one. All kinds of sizes, east to west, and everywhere from downtown Detroit to San Jose to West Hartford, which we'll talk about. Next slide, Dan. And the thing I want you to understand first and foremost, it's your downtown. And we are committed, I think, unusually as developers, to start there. Ask the people in their town what they think, what they've learned. I can tell you what I've learned already about Westfield. It's that Mayor Brindle is a newbie. He's only been here 20 some years. Now, I've met people who've been 70 years, 50 years. I think Rabbi Kroloff's been here 50 some years. It's a very cool thing, and it's a very significant thing. So that's what we're starting right now, is what we call our listening tour, to talk about what we're going to do step by step, and to come back to you and listen to what you think about it every step on the way. Next slide. Now, let's start first with what exact properties that we're talking about. This is my map of downtown Westfield. I think most of you can recognize the two red blobs of property. One is around the L&T, where the store is there, with the parking on either side of the store. We also have parking lots across from North Avenue, next to the YMCA and next to the church. What's very interesting about this collection of properties is that if you see, it's pretty close to the same size as the traditional part of downtown. Unlike the traditional part of downtown, there's only 4 landowners here: the YMCA, the church, ourselves, and of course the town. And so it makes it quite unusual. I think this is an unusual piece of Westfield because it's missing an identity. And there's a huge opportunity here working with these landowners to create a wonderful part of Westfield. But the other properties you see are the parking lots on either side of the train station. Very, very important, particularly in my mind, because I feel like they could be so much more. This is the train that is one of the key components of downtown. We asked the mayor when we first talked, we said, listen, we want to be on the same page with downtown Westfield. We're happy with saying, as Westfield goes, we go. We don't want to compete with it. We don't want to try to figure out how to do what we want to do versus downtown. So that's why we've become designated for both parcels of land. So we can be the most aligned with all the other agendas in Westfield. Let's change slides, Dan. Now, one of the coolest things is that Lord and Taylor has had a long history of being a neighbor and a citizen and a landowner with downtown. And that's really our approach here, is to continue that history. Next slide. And number one issue in my mind is not just what we do, that's important, but that we do it in a Westfield kind of way. Westfield has its own ways of doing things, its own way of being, and we want to continue to step in and slide into that way of being. Next slide, Dan. Now, one of the cool things when we began to realize the store was probably not going to make it, we began to ask, well, what is the Westfield way? What do you guys want? How do you want it? How is it that you do things? I've been doing this for 40 years across the country. I've never had someone say, oh, well, here it is. It's right here in this book. We just studied our plans. We're thinking about our plans, and here's how we would think. These pages you see here were kind of my notes from what was called the master plan reexamination. Where it's a New Jersey thing. It's a fantastic thing where you have to re-examine your master plan ideas every 10 years. Turns out that 10 years was in 2018. That's pretty cool. You can kind of read here some of the things it talks about. And it's not so much that it's right or wrong, but it's articulated. You can talk about it because you've read and you say, it says relocate the fire department headquarters. That's interesting. Consider installation of public art and murals, etc. There are several pages of these things that are very important. Now, what's secondly important is the town council voted to understand these, approve them, and accept them in this document. And you can go on the town's website and get your own copy. It's about 200 pages. It's pretty interesting. So two things I want to do by way of introducing ourselves is I'm going to take some things that we read in the master plan and just say, coincidentally, you have the developer who is the best at doing that stuff in the country. And I'll just introduce ourselves, show you about 4 slides of all the things that are in your re-examination that we naturally do. Next slide, Dan. So one of the things that mentions is that the town is open to some redevelopments. And if we do them, we kind of think they should be downtown. We shouldn't be developing out in the neighborhoods, etc. But there is room and property to do that downtown. 66% of the respondents said that. And my point is, you just can't take an office developer or a retail developer or housing and say, let's do it downtown. Downtown's not like that. And downtown is pretty much mixed use. It needs to be authentic and timeless. That's what Streetworks does. Here's 2 examples, one on the East Coast in Washington, D.C., Bethesda, one on the West Coast in San Jose, California. And it just goes to show what something looked like before in the 90s, basically, and what it looked like afterwards. And the most important thing and difference between these 2 pictures is there's a great public space. The one in Bethesda is called Bethesda Lane. Fantastic. It's sitting where a grocery store used to be. And the one below in Santana Row is called Olin Way. You're saying, well, what the hell is Olin? Where did that come from? Well, that was the developer's dog. So it just goes to say there's a certain amount of reality, but these are 2 of the most wonderful places in America now. And that's what we do, and that's our attitude as we start to think about this. Next slide. Similar to this is my own interest in looking at different ways that people live in their downtowns. Now, Westfield, as you see there, is about 83% single-family homes, and they're beautiful, and they have wonderful neighborhoods. What Westfield isn't as strong on is the ability to live throughout your life cycle. You could be born in a place, go to school there, maybe get married there, raise a family there, and retire there. Not as many options in Westfield for that. And I think and by the way, that's true in America. I think that's a wonderful thing to think about. How could me, as a Westfielder, live my whole life here if I wanted to, if I loved it? My friends are here, my family's here. We're going to explore that. I don't think if downtown's a neighborhood, which it is, you got to have neighbors to have a neighborhood. Next slide. Got a couple more of these. Obviously, people are interested in the goods and services in downtown. Okay, 48%, 61% say we could have some more entertainment, 56 say more restaurants. I don't think that's what it's all about. I think sidewalks are like the front porch of downtown where you bump into each other and you walk and you see people that you know and have known for a long time. In all of our projects, we try to create great places, plazas, parks, fantastic sidewalks that tie everything together and bring it all together, not just those uses. Excuse me. So you see some of the before and afters up here, particularly West Hartford. We're going to share that with you. It's very similar to Westfield, but we're all about the spaces in between the buildings, making them meaningful and unique. Last slide. And finally, which is something that is really near and dear to my heart. This, by the way, it was a mall in Boca Raton. You see it in the before. It was not a great mall, frankly. And we took this and we made it the new downtown for Boca. We added 10 acres, a third of the site in public open space. We created a new community center. We created a place for people to walk and shop and go to markets, etc. And to my mind, they are the glue of the community. It's these spaces and places that are key to any kind of planning. So let's go one more slide. What I'd like to do as way of introduction is show you a short 6-minute video that we took 10 years after our project in West Hartford was open. We were at a fair and we just asked anybody who walked by, tell us 10 years later, what do you think about this project? And would you vote for it again? They had to vote twice for this project. And would you do it all again? Listen to what they say. And then the rest of the time, I'm anxious to hear from you and have some conversation. So Dan, if you don't mind.
Blueback Square is a part of downtown West Hartford known as the Center.
Here, the goal was to bring a variety of uses together that would make a 24/7 environment.
It's as much an attitude as a physical thing.
Residential makes you feel a sense of ownership. Retail activates the streets, and office brings the people during the work week.
They want to live close enough to this area where they can entertain their friends, entertain their family, grab a cup of coffee, listen to some live music, go to the bookstore. There's a lot of positive energy around this particular location.
It's another option of a way to live that is urban-esque with, I think, a suburban ease of life.
It's kind of like our town square now, and I think that was the idea behind the square, to make it like the central meeting point.
I'm the general sales manager of Cycle Bar in West Hartford.
I'm the owner of Ooh La La Boutique here.
There's really so much to do here in Blueback Square.
I've been here for 9 years, and I just love this location and the people that come through my doors.
If you want to get that nightlife, that atmosphere, there's so many restaurants.
I love it when people come to walk their dogs, walk their babies, they go to the library, they go to Whole Foods.
I feel like it's that perfect balance between a city and suburban lifestyle.
It's a hometown, it's a community, and I think that's what makes us so special.
Cheers!
If you were to fly over West Hartford Center in an airplane, what you would see is that 50% was a quaint New England village with a very pretty green and a white steepled church. And the other 50% was a couple of used car lots and an American Legion Hall, and it was almost like two different worlds.
West Hartford has had a great defined downtown for a long, long time. It had a piece of it that was broken. Most downtowns do.
It was just an unattractive place that wasn't used.
A logical reaction when you hear there's a new development is, oh God, what's that gonna be?
We're New England. Change is not something that just is accepted widely and very rapidly by most of our residents. Richard and his team, when they said what they were going to do, they did what they said.
It starts with history. How do you incorporate history that is only West Hartford's?
We were building something for the long term, and we were building something that reflected them.
The word blueback was named after Noah Webster's first speller and could only be in West Hartford because of that.
The impact of incorporating the town's most famous citizen, Noah Webster, coupled with the fact that he did something that we could extrapolate and then take it into this Blueback Square development, really was a home run.
What I saw were developers that really wanted to do the right fit and the right thing for the town.
So this was just an extension of what we wanted.
If you had a question about this development and you were unsure, there was someone to answer your question. I think they did everything they could to make it an open process for the community.
In the private-public model, we said the private developer will spend the money to do public improvements.
We made a bargain. We were a team.
I really felt with my 4 sons, I was wondering where would they go and what would bring them back to our community to live.
You could not let this escape. You could not allow this to go someplace else. This was truly our future.
So you got diverse people, you got emphasis on education, property values go up, people are excited to live here, and it really turned into a very positive experience.
We raised our children in California.
And while they were growing up, a new development was built called Santana Row, which we all love. But then they both settled on the East Coast in Connecticut. We were looking at the condo at Santana Row, but thought we'd really like to be nearer to our kids.
So our daughter said, hey.
She lived in West Hartford at the time.
She called us and said, Mom, there's a big sign, and I think these are the same people who built Santana Row. We went, really?
We were one of the first people to move in to Blueback Square. We've been there now, starting our 11th or 12th year, and we just love it.
And mixing retail with living there and
grocery stores, offices, hardware stores, all the stuff that we could walk through.
It was a walking community.
It's really nice at the drop of a hat. Let's go get a pizza tonight. Let's go have a beer. Let's go out for a happy hour. Let's go have dinner.
That's really cool.
We'd encourage anyone to give it a try.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I think Blueback, it's now a fixture. It's integral to the town. I think it's contributed enormously to the success of the larger center. It's like it's always been here, and it's really helped put West Hartford on the map.
It wasn't 1 + 1 = 2. It was 1 + 1 = a hell of an amazing place.
At first I'd say, yes, they are crazy people because they have this vision, and it's a big vision, but it worked.
It's a remarkable thing. It's really given the town of 150 years in age a new start, if you will. We're not idly sitting by. We've got a new direction and a new identity that's very positive for us.
Well, thank you, Dan, and thank you all for being patient and giving us your attention. And all I can say now is we are very anxious to meet all of you, to hear from all of you. I'm looking forward. I would tell you that what we're planning to do over the course of 2021 is to explore as deep and far into the town as we can every good idea anybody has. The really good ones, I'm going to claim as my own, but the rest of them we're going to put into the project and make this happen as we move forward. So I give it back to you, Rabbi, and we'll move on.
Okay, thank you very much, Mayor and Richard and your team. Wonderful presentation. I've seen a couple of times, but it keeps getting more interesting as it goes along. So we're ready for discussion. comments, questions? I'm gonna, Jackie, can we go to gallery view here? Yes, at least I've got gallery. So you're able to see everybody else if you'd like to. And you can put your question in the chat box or in Q&A, or you can take a chance of being seen by raising your hands. And I do see one from David Golish right now in Q&A, and Jackie's also going to monitor it for me as well. David asks, for racial fairness, should we merge Westfield and Plainfield school systems? Okay. All right. I'm not sure whether that's in Streetworks province, but it's been asked. Let's go for it.
Well, I think what that question illustrates is how important schools are to a community and defining the community. It's one of the very important things. We did meet with the Board of Ed a week ago, coincidentally, and it's just one of the, it's not one of the things we're going to address in the redo of Lord and Taylor, but the role of the schools, particularly related to not just the school, but their open space, their playing fields, the Board of Ed, etc., is a key component that if there's anything that the development can do to help that, we will do it. And we're having conversations about it. So it's not an answer, and I'm not here to answer everything. Duly noted as a very important thing to talk about and to think about. And I think it points out that when you go through this process with these sites, there are many things that you can think about that you just didn't before, for whatever reason. I'll give you a good example. Remember, I told you the property around Lord and Taylor is owned by ourselves, the YMCA, the church, and the town. The three parking lots between the YMCA and Lord and Taylor are not doing any good to anybody. Lord and Taylor didn't share the parking. The Y has parking struggles at certain times of the day. And we are in conversations with the Y and the church about rethinking that property and seeing, is there anything better we can do, all working together?
Okay. Can you all hear me? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I lost the picture for a minute. Okay. We're ready.
We have 2 more questions in the chat.
That's right. From Linda Nepyorski, are you looking at senior living as part of the plan? Very wonderful question.
Well, let me step back a minute. One of the things the town has done after they did the re-examination was they hired a new consultant to do a new master plan, taking all that stuff into consideration. They're working on that right now. And that will come out, I don't know, this summer sometime. So until we see their recommendations of the new master plan, we're not focusing on specific things that we would do. I want to see what the town proposes for their master. I will, however, tell you that we are working on a new company specifically around senior living that incorporates a healthy wellness and medical component to it as part of it. So it's not just living in a place with that, but you would literally have your medical services as part of where you live. It's a new old idea. The idea is that your doctor would come to you. And so we're exploring that right now and are very interested in it.
That's quite interesting. And I just would add from what I've learned that while, as Richard said there, you're waiting for the planning on the more specifics, senior living in general and accessibility, and as you said at the beginning, being able to age in place. These are high priorities in your program for sure. I saw, let's see, from Joni Sweetwood, would Hudson be interested in adding other properties adjacent to the identified properties?
Well, the answer is yes. We're not focused on that. We're not trying to make our project bigger, but quite honestly, I'm interested in every property in Westfield, not because I want to own it, but because we all have to work together and do things together to make this a really special place. And so the mayor will tell you, I've put my 2 cents in on lots of property and whether, I don't even care if it's public or private, and what I think ought to happen there. So it's in the best way. One of the things we can do that your small landowner in the downtown can't do is have some bigger strategies that are broader. Example, when you own the property that we do, I can say, well, you know what? I really want this shop to be downtown, and I can subsidize its rent a little bit so that it can be here. We've done that on all of our projects. What are those kinds of shops? Often they're an art gallery, or they're a community thing that maybe doesn't pay the highest rents, but you need them for the kind of right feel. So rather than putting the 8th pizza place in Westfield, maybe we could subsidize that for a gallery or a music thing or whatever else. It's a little broader picture. And we do that in concert with the downtown and with the merchants downtown. So yes.
Okay, I'm just going to make a list here. We're going to finish the chat room, but then I'm going to go to, I think, Lou and is that Elisa that I see there? Any other hands up? But if you'll all wait just for a second. From Gene and Carol Rosner, do you have a timetable? Specifically, when can we expect to shovel in the ground?
Oh, that's a great question. So here's what you need to know about our timetable. We're not in a hurry. We're all about getting it done right. We didn't borrow money from the bank for the property. We've owned it. We own it now, we've owned it then. And however long it takes to get it right and do it right is what we're going to do. Now, obviously, we're anxious to get started and anxious to get a shovel in the ground. But my main concern is getting the right thing done at the right time.
Okay, from Marilyn Lieberman, any plans for the movie theater to be re-envisioned?
Presuming that's the Rialto.
Yes, you can presume that.
Just to take a step back, our property that we are specifically designated to deal with are our lots around the store and the parking lots adjacent to the train station, both north and south. The Rialto is further up, and it is one of the properties that the town has also designated for development. Remember, there's a parking lot behind the Rialto. Not a huge lot, but that's one, and there's a couple other lots in town that we, along with you, are very anxious to what happens there. I will have
Hey, Richard, if you don't mind,
the mayor might very well have a comment on that.
Yeah, I'll just add to that too. So I've been obsessed with the Rialto since they closed, and I had a task force working on it, and we were looking at plans in terms of coming up with a study to identify. I really will do everything I can to make sure it retains some type of performance entertainment theater component. I think realistically having it reopen as a movie theater in its historical context is probably not realistic. And that has only been accelerated by the pandemic as more people are streaming things at home. That being said, I still think there's an opportunity for some kind of community performance space. And I've been in significant, and so we are ready to go on something with a plan right before the pandemic hit. And when we had to zero out our budget, we had to put all that aside, but we're now kind of reconvening. I have a call with the county tomorrow about opportunities with the Union County Performing Arts Center and so forth. But the challenge, to be very candid, is the property owner he's paying $110,000 a year in property taxes for a building that's not delivering any revenue. So he can't sit around and wait in perpetuity for us to figure out what it's going to be. So there is a sense of urgency for us to figuring this out. StreetWorks is a great partner with us in terms of helping us figure out the possibilities and how that would fit in to everything else that we're considering. But there's a lot of people who are very vested in, maintaining it as something other than, an apartments there. So please know there's lots of people working on it, but it's pretty complicated to figure out, especially now.
That's great. Thank you, Mayor. I want to go to Lou Oakes and Lisa Sandman, and then back to the chat room from then. We're really moving along. So make your comments as brief as possible, or your question. Lou?
Thank you, Rabbi. When Richard had said, they would look at any property in Westfield, and then he kind of clarified that he was kind of aiming at the railway station, etc. My comment is about how Westfield used to be years ago. I'd say at least a third of the town, maybe more, has empty stores. And if you're going to really do a great job in a town like that, I'll take a town like Bethesda, Maryland. It's been involved with the pandemic. You can go to a restaurant 7 nights a week. What they did in their downtown, they really did a tremendous job fixing the town. People are proud of the town. And I don't know that you have that in Westfield right now. It's no fault of the mayor or anybody in particular. It's the landlords demanding, huge amounts of money. And is there anything Westfield can do to try and combat that?
Thank you.
Well, I have a couple thoughts on that. When we went to Bethesda, in our little area, it was about 18 blocks. There were 6 restaurants. And between you and me, they weren't even really that good of restaurants. After we widened the sidewalks, and I personally went to the state of Maryland and had the liquor laws changed.
This was before.
But you could serve liquor on the sidewalks. It seems like not that big a deal now. They didn't do that back in the early 90s. And the funny thing is nobody wanted it. None of the restaurants wanted that. We don't want any of that stuff. So I put some tables out in front of an old chicken restaurant. It's called Chicken Out. And we served beer. And all of a sudden, there was a line at the Chicken Out. No one could figure out what the hell is going on down there. Well, as you can imagine, the minute they saw that they were serving beer outside on the sidewalk, what do you think the other 6 restaurants wanted? They wanted to serve beer on the sidewalks. Well, now today, 20 years later, we have 190 restaurants in downtown Bethesda. And it is known as the place to go out to eat in that part of DC. What does that have to do with us? I believe that those are the kinds of things that you can bring back to Westfield, that some of them they had before, some of them they didn't, that can be one of a kind, wonderful experiences like Westfield has in many ways. Look at Quimby Street. Now, I've seen pictures of 400 people doing yoga out on Quimby Street. I think those are not Photoshopped. Those are actually people doing yoga in the middle of Quimby Street. If we could come up with things like that, that touch the soul of people that live in Westfield, that were special, that are one of a kind, that were unique, it could be very, very wonderful and exciting and be done in a Westfield way. That's what we're going to look to do. Special things. If you had a chicken store, I'd start out by serving beer up front of the chicken store, but we don't have to do that. We can do this in a Westfield way, but the mayor said it really important up front. There's not a silver bullet. There's not a one thing that you do. This is an organic place, and we're going to figure out those things that are wonderful. And I thank you for mentioning Bethesda because the main planning thing there was called serving alcohol on the street, but we'll figure out the equivalent in Westfield and work on it together. I do not think it's a one solution. I think it's a lot of small, really wonderful things.
How about frozen yogurt on the street?
Sounds good. By the way, I got to tell you, I love that everyone on the screen is just raising their hands
Yeah, it's great.
instead of that virtual hand thing or whatever else. It's really great.
It's great. So apropos of that, Elisa, we turn to you.
So first of all, I see that we're in very good hands, so that's very comforting. I've given some thought to the idea that even before the pandemic, the downtown was ailing in part because everyone was buying online. So addressing that issue, perhaps what we should do is try to create economy in Westfield that's unique, so that people, not just in Westfield, but the surrounding communities know that they can get something in Westfield they can't get online. So what would that be? Maybe there's going to be an art village. So if you have, for example, a parking deck, maybe the bottom of the parking deck are artisans, people who are knitting and making their own boots and things that people can't get anywhere. And the top of the deck could be a food emporium. So you could have Sahadi's up there. I go into Brooklyn to make my run to Sahadi's. You could have foods that you can't get anywhere. You could replicate a little Brooklyn. You could have on the top of the parking deck, you know, music and a little patio where people could gather. This could be on the Lord and Taylor side. And then parking. It's not just that people in Westfield complain about parking. It's that people in the other towns don't want to come into Westfield. So I would say, if you spend $1,000 in a store in Westfield, you will get free parking for a year in the parking deck. There's got to be some kind of deal that sweetens it so that people from Fanwood and Garwood want to come into our town. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Well, that was about 20 bucks worth of 2 cents. That was great.
That was very, very helpful. And that's great. We're going to move on now. We have some wonderful comments that are coming in rapidly. And we're going to probably need to have another session. I just keep losing my screen here. I'm not sure why. But Jackie, would you go to the next question, please, on the chat room?
Sure. So any consideration to providing a supermarket, maybe such as Stop and Shop, that's within walking distance?
That's a very interesting question to us because we have a long, decade-long history with Stop and Shop and have done Stop and Shops in some of our projects. I will tell you from our perspective, I don't know how you do this without an important role for food. I don't care what store it is, but food plays an important role in the creation of community. You know, if you want to know the key magic thing, it's called food. And you have Trader Joe's, which we're big fans of, and you have Stop and Shop. And maybe the key is just how that part of Westfield could come together and become the food place. Is that a place that the farmer's market goes? In our Blueback project, we have Whole Foods, which we then put the farmer's market in their parking lot. And everybody goes, well, how did you do that? And I said, well, Whole Foods is interested in food as well. And they were willing to put the farmer's market out front of their store so that everybody came with kind of a food orientation. So I take that as a suggestion that food is really important, and I think it is. And I think there's some work that can be done in Westfield to up the food game.
And Richard, I'll just add to that regarding our Stop and Shop, which was, you know, many of you know, was in litigation for years and so forth. We have re-engaged them and they are willing to come back starting from scratch with a whole new plan, and they're very excited to be part of any of our redevelopment plans. So I'm very excited about their renewed commitment to come back in a much bigger way, and quite frankly, even a better plan than what they had originally proposed. So hopefully we'll be hearing something publicly from Stop and Shop within the next 3 to 6 months.
That's great. Jackie, you want to go on with the next question, please?
Sure. Richard, we have someone asking if you could provide your contact information regarding any additional property.
We will do that. Dan, who you can see on the screen, will send to the rabbi my contact information. And you should always feel to drop me a note anytime, any place. And because I love to talk about this stuff.
Just to build on that, hi everyone, thanks for your great participation in this session. I'm Trinisa. I'd also love to invite you all to visit our website, where you'll be able to engage with a lot of the past projects that we've done at Streetworks, and there's some contact information there as well. So feel free to reach out to us, and you can also reach out to Richard directly. Richard, do you want me to put your email in the chat?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay. Will do.
Okay, so for anyone who wants to reach Richard directly, his email will be in the chat, and Jackie will have it as well. And if you don't pick it up off the chat, Jackie Gruscott could provide you as well. Okay, Jackie, are we at Laurie Goldsmith Heitner's now? Is that the next one? Or did I miss one?
No, that's a good one to go to.
Laurie, once a plan is developed for approval, does it require a vote from the town voters or just from the town council? And that's the mayor's question, I think, right, Shelley?
Yeah, and the way the process would work is, so the next step would be, after we've gone through all the public outreach and we come up with a plan that the town has had an opportunity to weigh in input, we would ultimately then go to a more formal and detailed redevelopment agreement with Streetworks, which would include financials and everything else. And that's a town vote. That's not a referendum. That's the pretty standard process for how these things work. But it obviously wouldn't be done without the public input process that we've committed to. And I just reiterate what Richard said. We're not going to try to accelerate or push this through by some artificial timeline. We're going to let the kind of public dictate what that timeline is. The pandemic is key. Like, while we can do all these Zoom calls and so forth, we do want the opportunity to be able to have people gather and actually physically see things and so forth. So until we feel like we've had the opportunity to really present it to the public in a meaningful way, we won't be like pushing any kind of agreement forward, but it ultimately will be a vote by the town council.
Great. So Marilyn Lieberman asks, do you think bringing in cooperative art galleries, as exist in many areas and museums, might work? And why don't I throw in the next question too, from Susan Pepper. Difficult to tell from your photos or other projects, how will you deal with the geographic spread of the redevelopment properties? So thoughts on art cooperative and geographic spread?
Well, you touched on one of my favorite topics. I lived for 25 years in a city called Alexandria, Virginia, across the Potomac River from Washington. I don't know if any of you have been there, but in Alexandria, they have a facility they call the Torpedo Factory. And the Torpedo Factory was a torpedo factory in World War II. Post-World War II, the city of Alexandria bought it and made it a place of small artists, a cooperative owned by the city. They also put their anthropology, or not anthropology, I forget what, the people that look at ruins, because they have a lot of historic buildings, and put that in there. And that became the social place for the Junior League and whatever else, and the Christmas tree, etc. And I'm madly in love with that concept, where it's just a collective group for anybody that needs some space, run by the city, and it's a wonderful place. And I think we are looking for the possibility to do something like that in Westfield in what we're proposing. I don't have a specific proposal yet, but I think art particularly is a wonderful way to create community. And I can tell you, as a place for tourists to go in Washington, D.C., most of the people going to Alexandria are going for two things: Mount Vernon, where George Washington hung out, and the torpedo factory. So I'm very, very interested in that, having kind of community aspect to it. It's where every dance was held in town. You should look it up. Go online and just look up the torpedo factory. I think it's a great idea. And there's got to be a way to figure that out.
That's great. The comments are coming great, and answers are great. So you want to say anything about geographic spread?
Oh, well, you know, here's what's interesting. When the town council said, we're going to look and see if there's ways to redevelop all the parking lots, that's the greatest thing ever. So you're not just taking one part of town, oh, the Lord and Taylor site, and putting your redevelopment there. You're putting it throughout the town, almost because of where the parking was, in every little neighborhood cluster that there is. That is the best way by far to infuse the whole downtown with some new activities, some new life, whatever. It's not just put over there in the new part of town. And remember, you don't have to redevelop every parking lot immediately or whatever. It can evolve. One of the things that new development will help Westfield with is its message to the real estate world, which says, we got new things coming. If you want to talk about new, it's Westfield, not just old. And there's a new future and a new power, and it will promote new things coming that you can't even imagine. And I can only tell you because I know that.
That's great. So yeah, and so the presence of all these parking lots provides opportunity because they're all in play. They're all in play.
And when you look at a map of Westfield, the major land use is called parking lots, and Westfield can do better than that.
Yeah, that's so these are great opportunities, and I see a few. Yeah. So a really important thing that I've heard you talk about, question from Judy Sheft and from Jeff and Eleanor Paris, is about shared workspace within a multi-purpose building, tech-based entrepreneurial aspects, co-work space, serving as a hub to attract business, and I know street traffic as well, foot traffic during the day. I've heard you talk about that, you and the mayor, and that's pretty exciting stuff.
Remember, the pandemic is creating all kinds of new opportunities that were always there. Think in your mind, your attitude, no matter what it is, for sidewalk cafes post-pandemic. And I watched, the whole country has gone through a PhD program in new and different ways to use our sidewalks. I'm in Manhattan, you're in Westfield. The whole country now thinks of it, by the way, they've done it that way in Europe for hundreds of years. But this is great. Think of all the new ways we can do that. Same thing's true with work. Look at what we're doing here. This is absolutely wild. And so it will affect our towns. And businesses are more accessible. It's not going to be that some people are working from home, but everybody's going to work from where they want to work. And it's a tremendous opportunity. And thank goodness Westfield hadn't been doing development like other towns around it the past 10 years, because many of those towns got the last version of what it is they built. And Westfield's going to get the new version of new ways of eating on sidewalks, of working from a common joint facility. It's really unbelievably exciting, the opportunities we have.
We have a bunch of grandkids who are interviewing for positions and so forth. And right up at the top is, I want to be able to work remotely
Yep.
all the time or most of the time. And I
Yep.
I bet there are a lot of people on this Zoom who have similar children or grandchildren who are looking for the same.
Amen.
That's great. There've been some discussion of maybe a group of buildings that would provide retail and workspace and living space as well. And that's fantastic. Before we conclude, Susan Dickstein asks, any thought about bringing in a major retail establishment to have a hub here? She mentions LL Bean, one of my favorites.
As you know, we are retailers. We understand retail. I think the most important thing is we're not looking for development that's driven around a single use. So like I said earlier, there's no silver bullet. We want a really active, all during the day and night collection of developments. We're not opposed to doing that. It's kind of not where the world's at right now, but I don't even know what to say. What we're really looking for is experiences and new experiences in a new way of being in the downtown. I would have no problem bringing in an REI or whatever else. We'll see. We'll see how that evolves. We certainly are at the forefront of understanding that in the world with our ownership of Saks Fifth Avenue, our ownership of the HBC department stores in Canada. So go on my website if you know somebody. Of course, everybody would love to have Apple. So, but more importantly, we want a unique, wonderful Westfield done in a Westfield way.
Fantastic. So we're near the conclusion here, but not the conclusion of our conversation. Before I turn it back to the mayor for a closing comment, and to Richard, if you have one, I just want to say that I'm thrilled by your engagement in this discussion. To all of you, your questions and your comments are really right spot on. And Richard and his team have indicated that they would like to continue this conversation with us over the coming months. And I hope that you all, they're very eager for your input. And I hope that you all would be open to maybe continuing this in perhaps 60 days, something like that. Perhaps in April, we might be ready for another conversation on this. So you're all players. Richard and Mayor, any final comment?
Well, the only thing I'm sorry. The only thing I would say is to thank you so much. I feel so honored that you would spend this time. I heard some really great ideas here today. So I beg you, please, the next time we get together, and it's not just going to be a listening tour. We will start to put some of our ideas out there and get your response to them. So thank you 100 times over. Thank you.
Mayor Bindle?
I could only say, see, Richard, I told you they wouldn't disappoint. I love this group. I love your questions. I love your engagement. And I'll just reiterate, I can't tell you how critical your input is. And while you all are engaged, can you please encourage your social networks, your neighbors, to be engaged and offer their input. We're not just saying this to be nice, we're saying it because it's really critical to the success of this project. This is your project. This isn't my project. This isn't Streetworks. This is the community's project. It is only going to be as good as the input we get. And so please encourage your neighbors, your friends, everybody to stay engaged. You know, if you don't get my town updates, please subscribe to our town updates, and we can westfieldnj.gov/updates. You can get emails where we're going to be pushing out information about this with information about other opportunities to provide input. So just please pay attention, and really it is, you know, with every challenge becomes opportunity. And I think as horrific as this pandemic has been on so many levels, it has created a tremendous opportunity for this community. And I get very excited about where I see we're going to be in 2 years. So thank you, Rabbi, and thank you, Streetworks, and thank all of you very much for participating today.
Thank you, Mayor. Would you give your contact again for your weekly, which is very good, incidentally.
It's westfieldnj.gov/updates. And if you just go there, you can click on what you want to get, and we send out an email. Lately, it's all been very COVID related, but it will hopefully it'll become less COVID related and more redevelopment. And you know, we talk about redevelopment, but it is really part of a larger, what I call our smart growth plan for the town. Redevelopment is one component of it. We're also doing a parks and recreation plan. We're also doing a townwide circulation and traffic plan. So we're also creating we're launching a new website next month, and there's going to be a whole component of it called our Westfield Strategic Smart Growth Plan. All of the information will be there, and you'll learn more about it. But for starters, sign up for our email updates, and we'll keep you posted on all of that.
And in the chat room is the mayor's contact.
Yeah.
Westfield NJ, and Dan Rosen has also added one as well.
The link, yep.
The link. So there you are. I want to thank Jackie Groscott again for being with us. Thank all of you. Wish you a very happy Purim, a Chag Sameach to you all. Don't eat too many hamantashen. Enjoy the spring. Come soon, please, spring. Be well. Get vaccinated as soon as you're eligible. Don't forget, I said at the start, Lori Zinberg in our Temple office, lzinberg@tewnj.org, has been very helpful, and others in the Temple in obtaining appointments if you still need assistance. This has been great. Richard, your team, Mayor, we will.
Thank you.
We will continue on to wonderful things. I look forward to seeing you all in a wonderful outdoor cafe surrounded by an art cooperative and
a beer.
And the beer. and the beer.
Hurry it along.
Okay. Stay well and stay safe, everybody, and keep smiling.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So when, shh.